Hi there, my name's Sue Elson. I'm an independent LinkedIn specialist, and I'd like to thank the Finance and Treasury Association for inviting me to come along today and talk about LinkedIn, the top 10 must-dos for your profile in 2018, which is part of the Essential Treasurer Series 2018. Welcome aboard, and I look forward to sharing my tips today. So firstly, I'd like to let you know, obviously, that the Finance and Treasury Association has a company profile on LinkedIn, but today we're going to be focusing on your LinkedIn profile. But before we do that, you might like to learn a little bit more about the benefits of LinkedIn. And I've written an article on Quora.com that you may find of interest, which talks about some of the different reasons why you should consider using LinkedIn, either for you or for your enterprise, as well as I've written an article on the business case for LinkedIn. I know that that's very important to finance and treasury professionals to obviously prove that there's a business case for these things. And the third one that I'd like to just quickly mention is this one on how your employees can support your business on LinkedIn and why they should. And this might give you some insights as to why it's of benefit for you to support the enterprise you work for, or for you to encourage some of the people who work for your enterprise to support you via LinkedIn. So first and foremost, I'd also like to remind you that I presented at the Finance and Treasury 2017 conference at the Gold Coast up in Queensland in November last year, and the details from that presentation, including the PowerPoint slides and the audio recording, are online on my sueelson.website, which you're welcome to check out if you'd like to see the slides and so on with it. But this is going to be a more interactive presentation today. So firstly, I do encourage you to consider using Google Chrome as your browser for looking at LinkedIn. And before we start, I'm going to encourage you to change your settings and make sure that you scroll right down to Advanced and you tick off the box which says ask where to save each file before downloading. So just put that across there. Now, once you've signed into LinkedIn, this is pretty much the screen that will show for you. And I apologize if anything pops up here that's not relevant to you, but obviously this is live recording and I'm just going to show you through my profile and also a bit later go through Cale Bennett's profile. His profile was also showcased last year, and I'll show you by example some of the things that are on his LinkedIn profile before I then go through and show you how to contact me if you have any further questions. So when you first look at your LinkedIn profile, when you sign in, you'll see various details, and we'll come back to those shortly. But the first thing that I believe that you should do as part of updating your LinkedIn profile, if you haven't done it already, is to change your URL. So you'll see up here, my URL has already been changed just to my name. But if yours hasn't, this is where you click and change it. You just click the pen and change it. If that's not available when you choose save, you can try putting a dash between your first and last name. And if that's not available, you can take out the dash and try putting in a number at the end here. The only thing is, I do encourage you to choose a number that has got nothing to do with your date of birth, so that it's not part of your identity. What you can also see on this page is if you need to, for any reason, remove your profile from being seen online, you can just quickly flick this button across here, and also you don't need to delete it. I've also chosen to show all of my details publicly, but you can choose these settings to whatever suits you personally. So that's the first thing, is update your public profile URL. Now, the next thing I'm going to encourage you to do is start looking at some of your statistics. And one of the first statistics you'll notice when you scroll down is how many views you've had in the last 90 days, which is here on the left. And I encourage you to try and get that number to 100 or more per 90 days. If it's less than that, your profile is not actively working for you. I would also encourage you to get a similar number in search appearances, but this is only per week, so this is per 7 days. So obviously I've got a bit of work to do to increase my search appearances, but I'm getting plenty of work, so I'm not too anxious about it at the moment. But if you can do that, that's great. What you'll also notice is, because I have written articles on LinkedIn, I can check my number of followers, which is the number here. If you haven't written any articles on LinkedIn, you won't see that number. So You can see there I've got 13,725 followers, but in my network I can get that number off the top menu, and you can see I've got 13,239 people in my actual network at the moment. So it's a good idea to write these numbers down as they're live numbers only. Back on my LinkedIn profile, the other statistic I like to keep an eye on is the number of recommendations I've received. So if we scroll a bit further down, you'll see that I've managed to secure a similar number of recommendations that I've both received and given. So I recommend as a minimum that you aim for 6 of received and given recommendations. And you'll also see that I have here a range of endorsements and different range of votes for all of these. Now, it appears that my votes have actually disappeared recently because I had a lot more numbers than that, but they've changed the fields around. So yes, my votes have just vanished overnight, which is quite concerning because I did have a lot of votes for those different things. But anyway, that's the life on LinkedIn, and things can change at any time. So yeah, a bit disappointing that that's disappeared recently. Okay, so the next thing that I do when I'm working with an individual client before I start making any changes to their LinkedIn profile is I encourage them to save their profile to PDF. So if I click this here, I will then save it on my G drive, choose today's date back to front, so 180423, and then put dashes between the words in the file name. And then save that to my little G drive at the moment. You can do this by visiting anybody's profile and clicking on the more or the 3 dots next to their profile. So if you'd like to print up somebody else's profile and borrow a few ideas off of there, that's also a really good idea. So that's my third tip. The fourth one is to download your data. So up here from the menu under settings and privacy, if you choose privacy and scroll down, you will see here that there's an option to download your data. And I encourage you to do this at least every 6 months in the unlikely event that LinkedIn, something happens to it, or your profile is removed or deleted for some reason. And then you can just click Request Archive, type in your password and choose Done. Now, what will happen is you'll receive an email, and in that email will be a link that you need to click on and download those files within 72 hours of receiving that email. One of the files that you will download is a CSV file, which you can open in Excel and will give you the first name, last name, email address, current job title, current company, and the date you connected with all of your LinkedIn connections. So that can be really worthwhile for you as well. Now, moving on from there, there's actually quite a number of settings that I encourage you to look at as well. So one of the ones that is my favourite thing to do as soon as I log in is to quickly look and see, I call it reverse stalking, who's been looking at me. So I can see 1, 2, 3 people, and 2 are people who've looked at me anonymously. And I'm on the free LinkedIn account. If you've got the premium account, you'll see the last 90 days of people who've looked at your profile. But you need to have yourself turned on as visible to be able to see those. But if you would like to look at profiles anonymously, you can do that again in Settings and Privacy under the Privacy tab, and you can choose this as profile viewing options. As I say, I have to leave it on here if I want to see those last 5 people, but if I want to go and look at someone anonymously, I can change myself to anonymously there, go and check out the other profile, and then come back and turn myself back on. People on the premium account often leave this as anonymous all the time. If you look at someone's profile anonymously, even if they have the premium account, they will not be able to see that you looked at their profile. That is a blanket sort of rule that goes across. There are a few other settings that I like to encourage you to think about in here. If you're in the job hunt, I definitely encourage you to make sure that everyone on LinkedIn can see your email address. And also you might choose to, turn on whether your connections can see your connections or whether you only want that to be you. Anybody who's in a high profile position or a sales role, I definitely suggest only you. But I'm in consulting, so I've got it at your connections. This one, I encourage every single one of you to turn to no. Viewers of this profile also viewed. The last thing you want to be doing is promoting your competitors when somebody looks at your LinkedIn profile. And that's, one of my other top tips. You can go through and change a number of these other ones. You can also, in your account, make sure that you've added in all the email addresses that you have to your account, so that if somebody tries to invite you to connect with them on LinkedIn, whether it's your personal email or one of your work email addresses, then they can still do that because that email address is associated with this account. So even if you don't have access to an old work email address, do not remove it from here. Leave it on there so that if people try and invite you via that email address, it will come to your profile. This screen will also show you when you joined LinkedIn, so you can see I've been on LinkedIn for quite a long time now. The other one that people find that once they start becoming active on LinkedIn is they start getting a lot of emails from LinkedIn. So I'd encourage you to look at this communication setting and actually decide what sort of preferences you want there for receiving correspondence from LinkedIn, or you can set up a rule on your email inbox that everything that comes from linkedin.com goes into a particular folder, and then you can manage your emails a bit more quickly that way over time. So just to go through a couple of features on my LinkedIn profile of sections that I really, really encourage you to develop well on your LinkedIn profile. Firstly, your headline, and that needs to include your keywords. There's 120 characters available there, but if you update it on a mobile device, as in a phone or a tablet, you can have up to about 200 characters there. So those keywords are very important, particularly the first one. So if you want to talk about being a finance and treasury professional, definitely put it in there. You'll also see that my summary, only the first few lines are showing, but then the bling, the videos and the image that I've attached to that show up in that little slide bar there. So really worthwhile to do that. With all of your jobs, I encourage you to provide a description, tasks, achievements, and then contact details. And again, a little bit more bling in the form of videos or PDFs or something like that to add a bit of colour and flavour. I've chosen to put in everything from my entire career. Some people prefer to only focus on the last 10 years. That's again a personal choice. And feel free to stalk me as often as you like and see how I've written up other jobs. You'll see I've taught at RMIT and the Centre for Adult Education. I've done international work. And if you go right down to the bottom, you'll see that I've even previously worked at Westpac. But because that was such a long time ago in terms of my career, I've summarised 11 years just into one position there. So it's not in as much detail. And then also when I had a bit of a time with career break and study, I've grouped all of that time frame into one in that second role. So this might give you some ideas as to how to present information so that there's no gaps on your resume. What I'd also like to show you is how I've recorded my education. So depending on where you live or have worked, you may not have heard about the University of South Australia. So I provide a brief description about that, and I list my subjects from my academic transcript and provide a link to the university. That will be clickable on a mobile device, an Android phone, so definitely worth putting in there. But also if somebody wants to check that I actually got those qualifications, they can contact the university quite easily by doing that. You'll also note that I've included my volunteer experience as well, and then also that I've gone into a great deal of depth with other sections on my LinkedIn profile. So organisations, certifications, publications, honours and awards, languages, projects, courses and test scores. And then I'm also following companies that are of interest to me. So to show you how this works on a finance and treasury professional's profile, first of all, we can see that Cale has updated his LinkedIn URL. And by the way, he did give me permission to showcase his profile. He's also put in a nice picture in here above his photograph, and his eyes are roughly on the 1/3 line, and he's smiling with his teeth showing, and he's just got a nice head and shoulders shot there. He's put some keywords in his headline, and if I click see contact information, I can see his email address. And he's added 3 websites in there. Because he's got his own personal website, he's put those in there and his previous employer, but I'd actually suggest that one of those websites could be for instance, the Finance and Treasury Association, if you're a member of the FTA. Further down, we can see in his summary, he's put in a bit more details and also ways for people to contact him immediately if they're interested in reaching out to him. And he's got loads of keywords in here to indicate some of his experience. He's obviously got different roles and he's written those up slightly differently, but you can see how dot points make it so much easier to read his content. Here's a little bit of bling, and then he's participated in the CPA program, studied at QUT, done some voluntary work, and here he's got his votes for his skills and endorsements, and also he's got a recommendation, one both given and received. Now what's really interesting here in certifications is he's mentioned that he's a certified finance and treasury professional with the FTA, and also he's mentioned it in the organisation field as well, because he's on the committee. So really good for that. And he's also got that listed here in his interests, because if we look at the companies that he is actually following, we'll find in here the Finance and Treasury Association, or at least it was the last time I looked. There we are. So that alerts people to the fact that, you know, he's a finance and treasury professional as well. So in terms of ways that you can showcase your membership, obviously if you haven't already, I really encourage you to follow the FTA. So you can easily find them on here by typing in Finance and Treasury Association and just clicking follow there. So that will help you do that. You can also check out some of their recent posts and see what they've been doing recently. So that's one way. As I said before, in your profile section where you have your contact information, you can include 3 links. So if you wanted to edit that, you could make one of those here, the Finance and Treasury Association, choose other, and then say FTA in there. You could also provide it as Kale has done, as I said before, in the both the organisations and certification section. So even if you're just a professional member, not a certified member, you could still list that in certifications. Now, in terms of what else you can do on LinkedIn to showcase your expertise, you'll see here that Kale has started writing articles and that he's also active on LinkedIn. So in my news feed, when it arrives in the morning, what I can choose to do is go through here and either like, comment or share relevant information. And I consider liking to be worth 1 brownie point, comments to be worth 5 brownie points, and sharing to be worth 10 brownie points. But obviously before I shared anything, I would definitely read all about it, click on the link, verify that everything is okay, and then I would consider sharing it. So if you want to start interacting and doing that, you can definitely do that via the news feed. If you would like to write an article, you can just go up here to the top, press write an article, and away you go. If you would like some tips on to how to write that article, you can look at some of the articles I've written previously, and one of them here is how to write a search engine optimized article on LinkedIn. So I think that'll do for today. There's quite a lot of information that I've covered. Feel free to check out my profile or Cale Bennett's profile. As you've seen, he's already made some changes so that it's Finance and Treasury Association friendly. I also have a lot more information, my books, podcasts, presentations, publications, you name it, all on my sueelson.com website. And if you click the contact one, I'm more than happy to answer quick questions via email there. So thanks for joining this Finance and Treasury Association presentation as part of the Essential Treasurer series, 23rd of April 2018 for the Finance and Treasury Association. Bye for now.